Hey there, kids. This is chapter 20. There we go. The Oddmire, book 1, The Changeling. Cole crested the hill and immediately dropped to his belly against the prickly grass. Annie lowered her head and caught up with him in a crouch. "What is it?" she whispered. "Oh, stay down," he hissed. "That's the Queenie up ahead." "Queenie? What are you talking?" And then Annie saw. She stood up. "You daft woman! I said down!" rasped Cole. Annie did not get down. In the clearing ahead, a strange woman stood over her boys. The woman wore a cloak of thick, dark furs. Beside her cowered a child Annie did not recognize, a girl agitated and disheveled with wild curly hair. She couldn't make out their words, but her twins were speaking to the woman. "Those are my boys," Annie breathed. Now the queen was saying something to the children, but Annie still could not hear any voices from atop the craggy hill. Abruptly, the woman waved her hand. The air rippled, and tin and coal crumpled to the sodden ground. "Those are my boys," Annie repeated numbly. She started forward. Cole pulled at the hem of her skirt, shaking his head, his eyes nervous and pleading. Annie hardly noticed him. Down in the clearing, the queen had turned her attention to the remaining child. A girl looked up about the same age as Annie's boys. The horrible woman spoke again and pointed a finger squarely at the girl's chest. The girl spun away, but before her back was to the queen, she already begun to change. She trembled and doubled over, and then the girl was not a girl at all. She had become an animal, covered in rich, dark fur, just like the woman's cloak. Annie blanched. Was that poor, frightened child fated to become the wicked woman's next garment? A matching shawl, perhaps? The queen turned her attention back to the motionless twins. Annie Burton's fists clenched, her teeth ground, her legs pumped, and the craggy hillside swept beneath her. "Those," she growled loudly, "are my boys." The queen looked up. She blinked. The queen of the deep dark, witch of the wild wood, mother of monsters, was not expecting Annie Burton. Candlebeard crouched low behind a prickly bush. He chewed on the ends of his mustache as his stomach twisted and tightened. He should not have come back. He should have left long ago, should have run far away with the rest of the hinky punks and never come back to the terrible forest at all, but it was too late for that. At the queen's will, the boys had collapsed to the ground not 20 feet from where Candlebeard was hiding. He cringed. The witch looked away, raising her hand to point at the little forest girl. "Big, big trouble," she said. There was a whimper and a muffled pop, and then Candlebeard could not see the girl anymore. He could smell the witchy magic in the air, earthen and very human, but sharp with the power of the other world, too. The boys lay lifeless between Candlebeard and the witch. No, not lifeless. He could see their chests rise and fall with shallow breaths. A nervous idea began to pace back and forth in Candlebeard's mind. He shook his head to dislodge it, but the idea continued to march unbidden through his thoughts. The witch turned back to the boys, and Candlebeard saw her face clearly for the first time. He held his breath. He had never been so close to the witch before, and he could only hope that she did not see him. He held his hands in front of his candle, willing his own flame to dim. The witch looked about 30 years old, or possibly 65, not a day over 90. Candlebeard had never been particularly good at judging ages, especially those of short-lived humans who couldn't be bothered to grow proper beards. The woman was pretty enough, he supposed, as humans go. She had hard features and dark, smoky hair, but her expression was cold and forbidding. Her icy gaze rose a fraction to pierce the gloom of the forest, and Candlebeard's heart dropped. Had she heard him? Could she hear him, his heart pounding even now, see his flame flickering? And then, abruptly, she turned away again. Candlebeard breathed. On the opposite side of the clearing, a human woman was running down the hill toward them. She ran clumsily, not minding her step, her eyes fixed on the queen. The queen cocked her head at the woman's approach. Intrigued, the queen stepped toward her, away from the boys and away from Candlebeard. Every inch of the Candlebeard's body was shuddered. He could have been with his people right now. he thought miserably. He could have been far away from this terrible forest, never looking back. He had missed his chance back then. He would not miss it now. The nervous idea that had been pacing back and forth in his mind saw its opportunity and clambered hastily down into his feet. Candlebeard took a deep breath and crept out from beneath the prickly bush. Cole could only watch, mortified. Annie Burton did not fall down the hill exactly. She stumbled, yes, tripping on several rocks and viney plants, but she did not fall. Gravity was no match for Annie Burton's fury, and she would not give it the satisfaction of halting her approach. Above her, Cole clawed at his own cheeks in indecision. There was no reason to join her in her madness. What was she thinking? And what was to be gained? It wasn't as though the woman had more on the line than Cole. The whole of the goblin horde would wither and die if the changeling never made it through the forest. This was about so much more than two stupid children. Cole let his hands drop to his sides. But it was about two stupid children as well. They were the two stupid children Cole had watched over almost 13 years. They were the stupid children he had protected, weaving goblin charms to keep their rickety tree fort from collapsing, to keep the wolves that wandered the edge of the woods from prowling too close, to keep the dam upstream from cracking. It was a human-built dam, shoddy even by their standards, and should have burst and flooded the town a decade ago. Cole had made the repairs himself. He had watched out for those stupid children. They were his stupid children. Well, at least one of them was his. Cole steeled himself. He drew himself up to his full 4 feet and 7 inches and climbed over the ledge after Annie Burton. The queen took slow, measured steps to meet the intruders at the foot of the hill, and she suppressed a smile. Directly in front of her, the furious human Annie Burton planted her feet on solid ground. At last, her teeth clenched, her fists balled. The little goblin halted and steeled himself several feet behind, looking resolute as he could. Precious thing. Those are my boys, Annie growled. I heard you the first time, the queen replied lazily. And you are wrong. Annie breathed through her teeth. She looked as though she might throw herself at the witch at any moment. One of the boys is yours, the queen continued. Just one. Isn't that right? The other? She eyed Cole. Well, I assume you had something to do that, didn't you, little thief? Cole blanched. A changeling? It's been a long time. But you came back for it, didn't you? Came back for your lost, wayward monster? She pursed her lips, considering. How unlike a goblin. If I thought it possible for one of your kind to care about a child's life, I might be deceived into believing that he meant something to you. Means everything, Cole croaked. I find that hard to believe, thief, unless I suppose you have something to gain from the poor creature's return. Cole did not answer. Quite a lot to gain? Cole's eyes fell. That does explain it. Small wonder that they were fleeing into my forest rather than back into the likes of you. You know, I think they might prefer life in the wildwood, don't you? No, I won't let you turn my boys into animals, Annie Burton said. You can't have them. The queen let a smile spread freely across her face, now equal parts amused and impressed. So bold, she said. My dear, sweet, stupid woman, you really believe you have a say in this, don't you? Annie only glared. They locked eyes, and the witch's smile melted slowly into something softer, a strange spark of tenderness glittering behind her gaze as she appraised this woman. If you really are so very much, she said, stiffening, you can even identify your own child? Annie scowled and glanced at Cole. Cole bit his lip. In 13 long years of all the studying and spying, Cole had never been certain which child was his marvelous changeling and which one was the unmagical human. Can't, can you? You both wish to claim your poor lost children, but you don't even know them, do you? Well, I do. The queen lowered her chin. Hard shadows fell under her brow. I know lost children, and I will make you a deal. If either one of you can guess correctly, if either one of you can claim your true kin, then I will give you back your child. Simple as that. You will be free to leave my forest with him and never look back. Cole brightened, and he remained less than satisfied. But whichever you choose, the queen finished, the other will be forfeited to me. Candlebeard kept himself low, thanking the uneven ground and the bushes for what scarce cover they provided him as he moved. The witch's back was still turned. She was talking to the two intruders. Candlebeard plucked a pebble from the ground and tossed it at the nearest slumbering boy. It bounced off Tin's cheek and his nose twitched. Candlebeard glanced back at the adults. That's not acceptable, Annie Burton was saying. Don't tell me it's not, said the queen calmly, although Candlebeard could hear the tightness in her voice. Tell your cowering compatriot there. That's the standard bargain, isn't it? One child taken, the other child left. Oops. Ah, the other left behind. That's how it works. What do you say, thief? Do you know your own blood well enough to choose? Cole took a hesitant step forward, then faltered, gnawing on his lip. If and I choose wrong, then your precious changeling belongs to the forest. Cole opened his mouth and then closed it, his expression visibly pained. That's no very fair. No, agreed the queen pointedly. It's not. Behind the witch, Candlebeard held his breath as he reached a trembling hand out to the nearest boy. Hinky punks, like all manner of fairies and oddlings, have glamour, the magical camouflage which they hide themselves from mortal eyes. Candlebeard concentrated harder than he could ever remember on maintaining his glamour now. He was confident that he was invisible to the human, and probably to the goblin as well, but it was neither the human nor the goblin he feared. He did not fully understand the queen of the deep dark, and he did not wish to remain in her company long enough to learn more. He shook Cole's shoulder. The boy only murmured softly in his sleep. The queen turned her head to look. Candlebeard felt the blood in his veins turn to ice, and he was completely exposed, and she was looking right at him. Her expression unchanging. Could she see him? And then the human Annie spoke again. I know. The queen turned back around. Candlebeard breathed. It took everything he had in him not to collapse then and there. You know, the queen said. I've always known, said Annie. The queen of the deep dark turned her eyes to Annie Burton. You ready to make a guess then? No, said Annie. Not a guess. A fact. A mother knows her children, and I know my boys. Both of them. The queen raised an eyebrow. Both is not a choice. Of course it's not. Why on earth would I choose? I don't care which one has my blood and which one doesn't. I don't care which one I pushed into this world with his father at my side and which one was born far away to some goblin mother and father. Actually, they're an egg, Cole began. Father has decided until I don't care. Those are my boys. And if you tell me that one of them will be staying in this horrible forest, well, you better get very used to me because I'm staying too. Annie took another step closer to the witch, refusing to be cowed. I am not, she said, planting her fists on her hips, leaving these woods without them. The queen did not back up. She did not scowl or sneer or snarl. She smiled. Good answer. Annie Burton blinked. Cole lifted his head. Take your children, said the witch. Her face turned toward the sunlight for a moment, and she looked almost pleasant. Both of them. Annie Burton's lips fell open. Huh, said Cole. A jagged smile cut across his face. That was the test, wasn't it? And the girl, said Annie Burton. The witch raised an eyebrow. The girl? There was a girl. I saw you turn her into a wild animal. I don't know what she did to wrong you, but no child deserves that. Turn her back. Let me take her home. I can look after her, help her find her family. The witch stared at Annie Burton. Her expression was maddeningly blank. That one you cannot have. Take your children and go before I change my mind. Stay to your darling goblin's path. Take nothing from my forest and do not stray too near to the bramble. Now go. Annie Burton saw two fluffy brown ears poke up behind a fat log where they had been hiding. Hazel eyes and a wet black nose followed. Fable twitched a furry snout and mewed at the witch. Annie gave a girl gave the girl a mournful glance before she turned to her boys. "Wait, where are they?" she said. "Only sleeping," said the witch, gesturing behind her. "They will—" But she too turned to look at the boys. Tin and coal were gone. "Where are they?" the queen demanded. "Is this another test?" said Cole. In the shadows of the deep dark, straining under the weight of a boy on either shoulder, Candlebeard ran. And that is the end of chapter 20. And this is what 20, wow, that's what 21 looks like.